I would like to start with the first question. As you know, that today's topic was restructuring the organization design to be future ready. So, what are your viewpoints on the same?
My views are that we actually need to go with the times. Just let me give you an example which is close home. Today we do not have very big spaces at our homes. Don't we redesign our space so that we can accommodate the most in that limited number of space? Gone are the days when we used to have those king size beds and we used to have larger than life almirahs. We have redesigned to suit our needs. In the same manner, if you see the country today, country is redesigning itself. Look at the laws that it has come out with, the insolvency law, the NCLT, the NCLAT. It has come out with the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act for the women folk. It has also come out with acts like the Real Estate Act, which never used to seem to be a reality. But today we have it. So, which means why an organization? It's the entire country which is churning, rechurning, and making sure that it remains contemporary and it remains valid for the current times. Having said that, I think it's also very important that the country, as well as organizations, which is the minuscule part of the country, they are looking from today at least 10 to 15 years ahead. So that's the mission and vision that they carry in their minds. And accordingly, if an organization is not restructured, actually we'll become like those dinosaurs, who cannot exist in this kind of an environment.
I think that's perfect. So, do you also think is there a need to restructure the conventional organization design to encounter the business challenges and to keep pace with today's rapidly changing market?
Yeah, when you say conventional, if I understand correctly, convention would be either, for example, an organization is either horizontal or it is vertical in nature. Now, we've seen that these conventions still exist. Now, for example, if we look at a startup company, which is just beginning its journey, it would never go for a vertical kind of a setup. It will always believe in horizontal because then it's easy to communicate and it's easy to fix up responsibilities. So therefore, if we say that these are conventional, I feel that these still stand the test of time. Yes, these days people feel that responsibilities should be more fixed, it should be more spoken, it should be more in black and white, it should be in the form of KRAs. If you talk about conventional, maybe in the earlier days, it was more on trust, more on confidence, and more a written, an oral contract vis-a-vis a written contract. But today's phenomenon, today's days, feel that everything should be meticulously noted. So if that be the case, I think we times have changed, and it's conventional and the non-conventional both has to coexist.
So, both at the same time, I believe. Yeah. So, would realigning the organizational design address some of the compliance challenges and ultimately lead to more allied and connected and efficient workplace?
Oh, definitely, it will. Uh, if you remember, when we were students, we never used to think a lot about tuitions. We thought that self study is the best study mode. That was conventional. In the modern times, I think for every subject, we send our kids for tuitions and we send them to specialized teacher, not the generalized teachers, which means times are changing. Expectations from the student is no more 60-70%, but more than 98%. So if the student is not getting close to 100%, the parent feels, oh, you've not done well. So why this example? The example is just for the reason that as times are changing, expectations are changing. I think organizational design needs to be redesigned, and it should be redesigned at least keeping 10 to 15 years horizon in mind, because it's a very expensive proposition. And dust takes time to settle. Even an organization structure or design that we create, it takes time to settle down. And by the time we settle down, if we think, no, 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 probably this was not the one which we wanted, and we again go for a redesign, I think that's the biggest mistake that an organization can make. So, my humble request to all my viewers and, of course, to my stakeholders also is that organizational design is something which should be given a lot of time by the upper management. The tone from the top should be very clear that what is it that the management wants. Secondly, it should not be an exercise which is done hurriedly and of which ownership only lies with HR. It should be an exercise of ownership of which should be given to each department, because ultimately, HR is not a silo department. It works in coordination with all the other departments. So it's very important that the ownership should be taken by all. and a very conscious call should be taken for the design.
Slowly and gradually, I think, things fall in place and then settle down. Yeah. So also in the recent past, we've noticed and we have witnessed that more and more government regulations and policies reforms are changing the dynamic business environment. So what are your views on the same?
I first and foremost, it's commendable efforts by the government. Look at the GST. I think it's the biggest landmark reform that our country is seeing after the independence era. Each government does their work very well, and each government, thinks that this is what the country requires, and this is how the law should be coming. Now, when we talk about laws or when we talk about agility, what it is actually, it is what the society has been enduring or facing over a number of years. And the government feels that probably now this is becoming a practice or a malpractice, which should be encouraged or curbed, as the case may be. And then it comes out in the form of a law. Now, if that be the case, I think an organizational structure should be built in such a manner that it is also being able to support the initiatives of the government. And having said that, I think your question was that in this changing environment, are we able to cope up? As an organization, are we able to cope up? I think yes. If we have to survive, it's survival of the fittest. And if the organization feels that, in spite of all odds, I need to survive, it takes all the requisite steps to make sure that it has the right mix of people and it has the right organization structure. So it's very important that we work in that direction.
Yeah, all right. So, also the recent amendment in the Company Act, we've had that predicts that the radical changes and is pushing corporates to be more accountable. How?
Oh, yes. This Companies Act 2013, I think after 1956, the act got completely changed. So in 56 or 57 odd years, we found a new law in the form of a Companies Act 2013. Now, the biggest advantage of this act is that it's helping the government to showcase that India is a global destination and we are in lines and in sync with the global laws. This regulation, Companies Act 2013, has shown to the world that we are the only country in the world. Let me share this with pride, where the government has said that India will have to spend 2% of, there are some benchmark limits, 2% of its net profit, from example, of the preceding last 3 years on CSR, that is corporate social responsibility. India has showcased that it's a social welfare state, and the corporates are more than willing to give back to the country from which they take their resources. Having said that, this Companies Act 2013, the best part of it is most of the regulations are towards self-regulation. So, the India Inc. has been given a lot of responsibilities to shoulder that, hello, we trust you. We trust the decision of your shareholders. So come forward and take your call. Having said that, the best part about Companies Act 2013 is it gives you a deterrent. And what is the deterrent? All the sections, most of them for that matter, says that if you are not capable to uphold the trust that we have reposed on you, be ready for a pecuniary fine which may run into thousands and lakhs and crores, or be ready for an imprisonment. So therefore the deterrent policy has been clearly laid down in the act. So this act is like a carrot and a stick policy. What is the carrot? That, hey, you're self-regulated, so you work as per your needs. Okay, and what is the stick? That if you are not following it, there's a big stigma which is waiting and knocking on your doors. So I really welcome this act.
So you are in favor of the act.
Absolutely.
So, how has the regulatory changes affected the manner in which the business is done in big corporate groups, and how is it likely to impact the changing governance?
As a company secretary, I think it's a question that you've asked is very close to my heart. Why? Because as a company secretary, we are governance professionals. We are also known as conscience keepers of company. So therefore, and we are the first contact point or touch point, with the board of directors, because we assist the board and we conduct all the meetings. We prepare all the board papers. We are strategic managers and we are business planners of the company. And we look at the different aspects of the head and brain of the company. Therefore, what you said is the regulatory mechanisms is affecting the working scenario of the economy and the corporates, definitely. what is a society, friend? Society is a place where people live in tandem with each other, and everybody has got space to grow. Why that happens? Because we have laws and regulations. Imagine a situation where you're moving in a traffic and there was no red signal, there was no green, and there was no yellow signal. Imagine just for a moment, it would have been so chaotic, and none of the cars would have been able to move, in the sense that everybody would have halted. Now, same way, these laws actually, they are enablers. We should not be looking at is as stoppers. So I think very enabling regulatory framework has been given by the government and successive governments. And I think government is very apt in giving us an ecosystem where it is saying, look, this is the ecosystem, this is the framework, this is the playground. Now you have a fair play and win. So that's great.
So I think we've, almost got all the answers to my questions. Thanks a lot, and thanks for enlightening us with all your views, and coming here and sharing your views with us. It was a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, and wish you all the
Yeah.
best for everything.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Shine.com and Hindustan Times, I welcome you to the Gurgaon edition of Hindustan Times Shine HR Conclave. It is my privilege to welcome you, and I acknowledge all of you for taking out the time to be a part of this evening. The topic for today's discussion is restructuring the organizational design to be future ready. The economic growth has not only opened new business opportunities, but also demonstrated new challenges. With customers becoming more empowered and competition becoming more rigorous, it has become imperative for businesses to sustain growth. This new paradigm market shift has forced companies to innovate rapidly, adapt their products and services, and stay closer than ever to their customers. The challenges, however, are not limited only to economic and market shifts. With more and more government regulations and policy reforms, businesses are always undergoing a constant change. For instance, the recent amendment in Companies Act envisages radical changes and is pushing the corporates to be more accountable. Such reforms, bundled with evolving economic challenges, has put the status quo of some organizations to question. The big question today in front of chief human resource officers and HR leaders is whether the good old conventional organization design still works in the current business scenario or not. I would now like to welcome onto the stage CS Mamta Binani, President, the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, New Delhi. She is the second Lady President of ICSI in its illustrious history of 47 years. She also serves as an independent director on few of the boards. Ms. Binani, I request you to come on the stage and deliver the keynote address. Ma'am, just
A very warm good evening and greetings from the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. At the outset, I must thank Hindustan Times and specifically Shine.com to have shared this common platform between the professionals and, of course, the mouthpiece of the economy, that is the newspapers. And, of course, such esteemed newspaper partnering with us is also a matter of pride for us. At the outset, first also let me acknowledge the presence of my esteemed council colleagues who have come all the way from different parts of the country. I acknowledge the presence of the Placement Committee Chairman, Mr. Mahavir Lunawat, rather CS Mahavir Lunawat. Acknowledge the presence of CS Ranjit Pandey, CS Satvinder Singh, CS Vineet Kumar Chaudhary, and of course, my secretary to ICSI, CS Dinesh Arora. And I acknowledge the efforts put in by the HR department led by Mr. Srivastava. Friends, Company Secretary and why Company Secretary partnering with Shine.com to really bring forth the focus that how Company Secretaries can be very useful and inevitable for the growth of an organization. It is said and normally understood that leaders are born, leaders are not made. But in this era, we all understand that leaders are actually made and may not be necessarily born. Having said so, let us also understand that is it just enough to have a good architecture of an organization or just to put the organization in all facets, in all places? Is that enough? Absolutely no. An organization is, of course, not made of brick and mortar, as a home is also not made of brick and mortar. It is made of the people who reside in it. It is made out of people who work for the organization. And therefore, HR is the focal point of any organization. Gone are the days when HR department, that is your department, which your esteemed good selves are heading in one capacity or the other, and ICSI salutes the great service that you bring to your organization and to the nation at large, how HR is posing such an important role to the economy. Friends, Company Secretary Institute is now trotted the world for almost 48 years. So we are going to very shortly celebrate our 50 years of our glorious existence. In this 50 years, we have given 48,000 soldiers, almost 48,000 soldiers to the economy. And when I say soldiers, I of course mean company secretaries. But barring that, let me mention that I have 4 lakh young community in my fold, which means I have 4 lakh students. And when I say students, does it mean people who are in class 11 or 12 or class 10 or 8? Of course not. My students are that young workforce, the young force that I am skilling towards Skill India and giving it to you for servicing your organization. Prime Minister Narendra Sahab Modi has definitely said that Skill India mission is probably the most important mission that he has brought forward to the economy. He says that by 2022, India would get the title of being the world's youngest economy, of being the world's youngest country. And by that time, just to take a rough estimate, it is about 500 million students or young workforce that India has to skill. I am partnering that growth story of the country. Let me also mention that our company secretary just doesn't work as the key managerial personnel, as you may popularly know them as in your departments of HR. Yes, friends, I think company secretary, I'm sure, company secretary is the only professional who has been acknowledged by the lawmakers to be compulsorily appointed in a company as a key managerial personnel. It gives me pride to mention that government has reposed that kind of confidence in us. Any company with paid up capital of 5 crores or more has to compulsorily appoint a company secretary. Now, is this a mandation that comes from law because it wants to save our profession or it wants to grow our profession? We all know the answer, which is a big no. It is the confidence that they repose on us which has given us this recognition over the number of years that we have been there. As a company secretary, let me just mention very quickly that we are actually, it is the nomenclature of CS, we are actually corporate strategists. We are company secretaries and we are corporate strategists. We are strategic managers, we are corporate planners, and we actively participate in the board as even for restructuring exercises. Friends, as company secretaries, my course and my practice both enables me to work very swiftly and quickly in capital market divisions, commodity markets, and for so matter, even for financial management and others. My people are working in WTO, treasury management, risk management, and of course, they go hand in hand with the board of directors. Friends, any board which has to really take decisions, of course, board are there to take decisions because they are the hands and legs of an organization. So who are the ears and who are the conscience keepers of that company? Yes, I proudly mention that they are the company secretaries. As an HR, how do we integrate a company secretary with an HR division? Let me give you a perspective. Gone are the days when we used to have a tick box approach in HR. I think HR is not only about people management, it is of course about corporate compliance management. So much of emphasis is there in the social laws in this economy that India is definitely known as a social welfare state. And therefore, enactments like the labor laws, the Workmen Compensation Act, and various other enactments like the environmental laws and others, they always take a center stage. And your good selves, who really man them well, hats off to you that you take so much of burden on your shoulders and you do it so beautifully. Friends, let me put across the point that company secretary is very well trained to look after the personnel laws, to look after the labor laws, so much so that the Haryana state government has given an exclusivity to company secretaries in saying that if a company secretary is certifying that the labor laws of that company is duly complied with, I repeat, is duly complied with, then even the labor inspector is not going to enter the factory premises. And that exclusivity has only been endowed on a company secretary. So therefore, this is just a point in case wherein I'm trying to mention that company secretaries go hand in hand with the HR department. If I am picking up some vital data of my people who are in employment and in practice, I find that almost 45% of my people are engaged in HR department in one way or the other. I would I'll just take 2-3 more minutes. I would just also like to emphasize on the training program that the Institute has, because a lot of us, seniors or juniors, or my peers, may have a thought in their mind that company secretary, hello Mamta ma'am, that's a distance learning course. So are you saying that in a distance learning course, you are actually putting your people to fire, F-I-R-E, and you are making them gold out of that fire? Yes, friends, I am mentioning that. I'm very, very particular when I say this. And I say this with all responsibility that the training structure that ICSI has actually makes them like that cocoon, like that butterfly in the cocoon, who, I'll share this small story with you. There was this small little butterfly. Of course, he has not become a butterfly. It was in the cocoon. It was trying to come out of that cocoon, of that small little hole that it had in the cocoon. It was trying and trying and trying, but it could not, because that small hole was not enabling the small little butterfly to come out of it. Just then, I happened to be around, and I thought that let me help that little butterfly who wants to come out and see the world. And I went forward, and with a scissor, I cut the cocoon. I cut the hole of the cocoon, gleefully, happily waiting that that little butterfly will come out of it to thank me and will swing with its wings and say, hello, I am free and now I can fly. But what happened? Actually, when it came out, it had crumpled wings and it had a swollen body. It could not move. An entire life of it could not move. Then, when I did a research on the Google, I realized that the strength it gets from fighting to come out of the cocoon is the one which makes it a beautiful butterfly, which gives all the powers to him to fly high and sit on the various beautiful plants. Friends, that is the strength I give my students when I train them. I don't pass them, because if they are not doing well, they cannot pass my examinations. And probably that is the reason we are so quality conscious that our results are not like the ones which people may think 30%, 40%. We are not having that kind of results. So we make them sure that they're industry ready and they're ready to serve you. They're ready to serve the industry. I would not take further time, but I would definitely mention that company secretaries have been playing a lead role. And I wish, as a captain of this ship, that I can take the ship to that horizon where I see no end at all, where I see more and more opportunities for growth of the profession, for the profession, and for the organizations at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Binani. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the privilege of having amongst us some very prominent individuals from the HR fraternity who are here to share their views and insights on the topic restructuring the organizational design to be future ready. Without much delay, let's move on to our panel discussion now. Our first panelist for the conclave is DP Singh, Vice President and Head HR, IBM India and South Asia. DP Singh is a seasoned HR professional with 32 years of experience in HR and business. Prior to taking on this role, DP was the human resources leader for IBM Middle East and Africa. A law graduate from Delhi University, DP Singh additionally holds a master's degree in business administration from the University Business School, Chandigarh, India. DP Singh is currently the chairperson, MCHM HR Committee, and an active member of SHRM India think tank firm. Welcome, sir. Our next speaker for the conclave is Dr. Kiranmay Dutt Pendiala, Corporate Vice President, Human Resources, AMD Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Greater Asia. In her current role, Dr. Kiranmay straddles the region responsibility for strategic plans on talent acquisition, talent management, and talent development, and partners with the human resources leader in her first team to represent the employee voice of the region. She is currently the chair MCHM Hyderabad and national board member MCHM and is associated with various professional bodies. Welcome, ma'am. Moving on to our next panelist, Qazi Mohammad Shahid, Chief Human Resource Officer, Telenor India. Shahid comes with an experience of over 26 years and has worked across geographies like South Asia, Middle East, Malaysia, and UK in various leadership roles. In his last assignment, he was the Chief Human Resource Officer, Grameen Phone in Bangladesh. Thank you, sir. Moving on to our next panelist, Dr. Bibek Banerjee, Dean and Head of Academics, Bridge School of Management. Dr. Banerjee is acknowledged widely as an innovation-driven institute builder in India. Dr. Banerjee joined Bridge School from the Institute of Management Technology, Ghaziabad, and previously he was at Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, where he spent 18 years as Professor of Marketing and Economics. Thank you for joining us, sir. Our next speaker is C.S. Narayan Shankar, Executive Vice President and Company Secretary, Mahindra and Mahindra Limited. Mr. Shankar joined Mahindra and Mahindra in the year 2001 and has over 25 years of rich experience in the field of corporate laws and legal affairs. He is also a director on boards of various Mahindra Group companies. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator for the panel discussion is Nishchay Suri. Nishchay is the partner and head of KPMG Academy. Nishchay has over 19 years of experience in the areas of leadership development, HR transformation, talent management, strategic rewards for a large global and Indian multinational across more than 25 countries. Nishchay is an eminent member of the CII leadership and HR Council as well. Thank you for being here, sir. Can we have a big round of applause for the panelists? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll also have a question and answer session during and after the panel discussion. Mr. Suri, over to you, please.
Thank you, Evan. So my request to Evan was that you should shorten our introductions, but he just increased the speed of talking. That's innovation right here. Welcome you all to this very interesting discussion and deliberation on organization design. How do we become future ready? What I thought I'd begin with, just given the nature of the subject, is do some baselining. And you might find this extremely theoretical, but I thought it was important to give our conversation more meaning. So I'll do some baselining with your permission. I won't take more than 5 to 7 minutes. Just introduce you to some nomenclature, some jargon that is used in the area of organization design. And even clear some myths that you might be under the impression of. So with your permission, I'll do that. Can we have the presentation on? Yes, thank you so much. I hate PowerPoint, but with just 5 or 7 minutes, I'll take the liberty of being the moderator and do some baselining with the subject. So very simply put, when you organize people and work, behind a strategic objective, that's organization design. Okay, very simply put, that arranging work and people, keeping strategic objectives in mind, is organization design. Of course. And if I can get this to work. Okay. what I intend to do is introduce some basic jargon as far as organization structure is concerned, and define some variables that might impact organization design. Two, the type of organization structures. A lot of words are thrown around in this domain as well. It's a functional structure, it's a product structure. Just basically introduce you to certain terminology as far as types of structures. Key takeaways as far as an ideal structure and what it should deliver on. And finally, certain design principles that often get discussed in boardrooms as an organization design or model is chosen upon or is determined. So very quickly, somebody needs to tell me where to point. Where should I point? Or I can raise my hand and somebody can change the slide. That works perfectly well. You want me to move closer there? Okay. Depends on the distance. Okay, very quickly. So clearly, the first myth is that organization design isn't about structure alone. Because often enough we confuse organization design and structure, which is an organization chart that you usually see. So when people talk about organization design, they show the organization construct through a chart, and they say, this is the organization design. It's only one element of the various elements that go into organization design. And that's the point really that this makes, is and it started working. Okay, hold on. Don't. It is guided by the vision and mission of the organization, of course, and therefore important to remember that form follows function. That the form that the organization takes is a direct inference or takeaway from what the organization's objectives are, and that's why they say form follows function. That's one important element here. Of course, it's important to remember that in addition to structure, as I mentioned, systems, culture, process, performance measures, people are all an integral part of organization design. And ultimately, of course, the operating context impacts what you aspire to do and how you do it, and your products and services. So we talk about the operating context as well. And just to give you a sense of what that operating context could be, for example, GST. As it comes into play, you'd see that organizations will be redesigned. Or Companies Act 2013. And therefore, we've got Mr. Narayan here, who's an eminent personality in this area and will help us talk about regulatory and legal changes that are impacting organizations and how they function from a design standpoint. Or you could have, for example, a external macro change as far as demographics are concerned, or an internal micro change as far as an organization's own demographics are concerned, and many people are about to retire. All of the above will have a direct impact on how an organization functions and operates, and with specific reference to organization design. A simple example could also relate to, for example, if an organization proposes to introduce a system that actually integrates work and gets rid of duplication, that will also have an impact on organization design. So whether it's regulatory, legal, social, technology-led, economic, these are all forces in the operating context, whether external or internal, that have a direct bearing on organization design. Types of organization structures. Now, this area of work dates back to Taylor, who essentially believed that there is one type of organization that is best suited, which itself has been challenged over the years, or that specialization, in fact, improves the quality of work. And or talked about specialization and division of labor is the only way to increase productivity. So that's where the genesis was. And with that came about functional structures. So when you talk about functional structures, marketing, production, supply chain, finance, they all report directly to the helm or at the apex of the organization. Of course, that was challenged along the way, and it was believed, Hawthorne in fact demonstrated that there are many more variables that actually impact productivity within the organization. And there were experiments done. Now, what has evolved over a period of time, other than the functional structures, for example, Apple globally began with a functional structure. And it's interesting to note that the person who was in charge of online for Apple wasn't in fact responsible for the images that would go onto that platform. That was actually controlled by the head of graphics. So they operated in the environment with a functional structure, and that's how they began. Of course, that changed along the way. Divisional products is typically what you find in FMCG companies. Okay? And of course, the notion is that low synergies between products, different distribution channels. And if you take Danone as an example, they had waters, baby nutrition, medical nutrition, and most FMCG companies still operate with a divisional structure. A third is a divisional geographic structure, wherein you believe that cultures are unique, markets are unique, and therefore you're organized by geography. In fact, Coca-Cola, for example, is a good example where they predominantly operate by geography. Okay? Similarly, when you go to process, and this is typically found in call centers. So internally organized, when you look at organizations, both where the internal customer is there or the external customer is there, but where a process can unify an experience, like a call center, you have that as an example where it is divisional but process-centric. Divisional customer is how a bank traditionally operates. So you've got high net worth customers, you've got customers in the mid-segment, you've got customers with the masses, and you operate based on different customer segments that have been formulated and serve their needs because their needs are distinctly different one from the other. And finally, the matrix structure, which has come to hound all of us in different ways. But telecom companies and consulting companies typically operate with the matrix in mind. In fact, Vodafone operated and still operates with a geographic structure, with the exception where it talks about marketing and innovation and procurement as three functions that operate globally. So in fact, three functions operate globally, but they are geography based in the way they operate businesses. So this is a quick introduction. I know this can be extremely painful to digest in a short period of time, but these are terms used very often, and we often don't know what they necessarily mean when they are used. So it's a crash course in a sense, so please bear with me. Finally, what should a structure enable? And hopefully this should come through from our conversations. But one very important element, or actually a couple of elements that are coming to bear. One is flexibility. So a lot of organizations talk about their ability to respond and change as the environment changes or competitive forces change, and how quickly are we able to align and adapt our organization to respond to that newness. The other is collaboration. So the coordination, collaboration between units, as far as an organization is concerned, how well they work together is another element that is being scrutinized with great interest. Because that's been an area that has been, I think, one of the shortcomings of corporate India, is how well we work together. So collaboration is another element that has been spoken of. A third, which has been spoken of, is speed. So speed capital, how quickly you respond. One is flexibility, but how quickly you respond is equally important in the context of organization design. So some elements here. And finally, this is again a quick stress test about your organization, which talks about speed. We've spoken about speed. Integration, which is good relationships between coordinating units. Flexibility, we've spoken about that too. Innovation, which is another element coming to bear, is, remember if we were having this conversation maybe a decade ago, there weren't any robos as far as the workplace is concerned. The advent of social media was missing. Collaborative technologies weren't present. And therefore, organization design is all about, addressing the voice of the customer, which has become supremely important, but more so looking at these disruptive forces or the advent of the millennials. How do you integrate and harmonize these existing forces to make yourself a player that is obviously a force to reckon with as far as competition is concerned? And finally, control, very important, from a standpoint of regulatory, the environment that we operate in. So far more scrutiny, many more stakeholders, a lot more disclosure, and how do you therefore keep control in an environment where, let's take Uber. Uber is a self-organized organization which operates on certain principles. But you still need to keep control, as you've seen and witnessed, that Uber has run into trouble in several countries and several occasions. So clearly control is an equally important determinant as far as organization design is concerned. So let me stop there. I usually don't do this, but the panel, when we had our conversation, we agreed that this would be at least some common ground basing would be important as we have this conversation. So with that, thank you all for being here. Great to see a lot of old friends in the audience as well and make some new ones. We'd like to begin with the operating context. And a lot of us have seen new managers and very frequent changes with new managers. Can you raise your hands, those that have had more than a manager in a particular year? That means you had a new reporting manager in the same year. You've never experienced two managers in 1 year, you're blessed. Fantastic. But that is a reality. And more than one manager? Have any of you ever reported to more than one person?
Several.
Okay, so the advent of the matrix is still evolving here. But clearly, you know what employees in an organization usually relate a organization design intervention to is the following. I lost my job. Okay, that's unfortunately hasn't been as common here as it has been in the West. I have to reapply for my job. Again, not as common as we would have seen in the West. I've had frequent change of managers. So I've had numerous managers that keep coming and going. You know, change in leadership, new manager keeps coming, and I have to keep getting to know this new person and his or her leadership style. I've been relocated several times. Every 2 years, I'm relocated to a new geography, a new business. Now, all of this is how an employee sees organization design. But that's really on account of something that has been triggered internally or externally. And with that, let me open this up. Let's start, Narayan, with you, because clearly that's an area we can all educate ourselves on. Can you talk about certain regulatory, governance, compliance-related changes that are causing boardrooms, management teams to have conversations on how it can impact their operations?